Hi, I'm Out of Darts. This week I wanted to do a review of the FDL-2X. I have been really excited about these blasters since the moment they came out, and I only recently have been able to justify and purchase one myself because they are a little on the pricey side. Not because they're overpriced, but because there's an insane amount of hardware, software, and 3D printing that went into making this. For those that aren't familiar with the FDL project, it's Project Foam Dart Launcher. Jesse, the creator and engineer behind this blaster, has made a couple different versions. This is the latest one, the FDL-2X, and the X just means it has the LED screen behind here. Now, I've thought these blasters were just really interesting because I believe he was the first person to fully 3D print at least a sophisticated Nerf blaster, but certainly a flywheel blaster. This blaster utilizes brushless flywheels, or flywheel motors rather, and they are 3D printed, which is something that astounds me that they work as well as they do. I imagine that they are printed with a randomized pattern so that the layer transition isn't a problem, and they are probably printed 100% infill. And I imagine they're a little bit tricky to print because printing a spinning mass on a traditional FDM printer, like all of mine, really is not ideal. But this blaster, surprisingly, doesn't make that much noise for how much power it has. I actually find it to be much quieter than most modified blasters, and certainly all rival blasters, especially modified. Now, there are some really interesting design choices. It has a very space gun feel, and I definitely somewhat copied TK and his scheme as far as the colors, except mine's inverse with my logo customized on here. It's got a stock point and back, which is great. It has a unique single trigger, which is unlike any other flywheel blaster that I've ever got a chance to use with. Obviously, there are some like I believe the Barricade, where you turn it on and then you would push, you would fire, so that would be a single trigger. But when you pull a trigger here, the flywheels rev up insanely fast, utilizing that brushless power, and fire a single shot, or 3 shots if you were in the different modes. Now, the blaster is really customizable via this screen in the back. You've got options for speed, rate of fire, and then your burst, ammo counter, minimum spin, max spin, and minimum speed. And all of these can be kind of fine-tuned to how you want to play. Now, personally, when I was playing with this, I played at rate of fire 100, and my normal play style is really heavy on the ammo, and I found that even with 4 or 5 mags, I was just burning through things so fast. Because the rate of fire of this, I believe, is around 15 for full auto. And it just screams. I think that was also at 100, which really I think 100 as far as speed. Nope, that was at 64, so that's actually a pretty good range. I found that between 60 and 85, 90 seemed to be like a really good sweet spot for accuracy and range. At 100% throttle, I was definitely getting more range, but at the risk of more spinouts. Now, this blaster loves these cheap darts that I sell, the AccuFakes. It was really easy on them. I found that it shot them really accurately and really consistently without a single jam through dozens and dozens of mags. I got the chance to play with this last weekend at our first war of the year, which was first war of the year. At the first war I went to for the year. They haven't stopped because they're pretty hardcore here up in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, and they play rain or shine, which is pretty cool. And the second I shot this for the first time, it was like a game changer for me because this blaster is incredibly responsive. You don't have to think about that extra rev. Even when I purchased the blaster, I was like, I don't like the single trigger. I'm never going to like that. And after about 3 shots at people with it, I was like, why would I ever have 2 triggers again? So I'd be curious to hear a lot of your thoughts in the comments, whether you have used this and like the single trigger, whether you hate the single trigger and have used it or haven't used it. It doesn't matter. I'm just kind of curious to hear others' opinions because I am, of course, working on new blasters all the time. I have a couple really big projects this year, and I'm going to be really excited to share those eventually. But the work that Jesse has done on this is just fantastic, and it's going to influence a lot of what I do going forward because it's here and you kind of have to watch what other people are doing first because he did some really phenomenal work. So this is also easily the most accurate flywheel blaster I've shot. I have a Morpheus 42.5 cage with Fang revamped and cyclones, and that is not as accurate as this. It's a really good setup. It's a metal aluminum tube, but somehow this is still shooting more accurate. And now that's somewhat subjective because I haven't sat them down, locked them down, but the amount of hits and how accurate I felt this blaster was in precision while playing with it was fantastic. And it's really a pretty compact blaster. It's this is not a flywheeler, of course, but it's not terribly that much larger. Twice the weight of the Kronos, of course, but it's not not a massive blaster. It's reasonably compact because it is somewhat minimalist as far as the design. You've got external flywheels and whatnot. I even love the way that this blaster starts up. Kind of lets you know that things are going, and the blaster also monitors your battery level and inactivity. So if you leave the blaster on and forget to turn it off or unplug the battery, it'll let you know. So with the shooting modes, I can of course turn down the rate of fire. Here is full auto, lower rate. That might be how I'm supposed to play, but the high rate of fire is just so much more fun. Now, the accuracy on this I felt really does almost match like the Caliburn, at least the Caliburn without the scar barrel, because I was shooting at Caliburn users and this thing really held its own and it kind of changed the game field for me. But my biggest problem is I am not used to carrying mags. So another thing I would like to hear from everybody, one big hole that's missing on my shop is I don't carry anything that you can put these in. I want to start carrying tactical gear that carries different types of mags depending on what people are using. And I'd love to hear what you like. What are some of your favorite holsters and pouches? Because I clearly need to figure out a way to carry, I don't know, 12 or more because I shoot just way too much to possibly... Sister's cringing behind the camera once again. But I really enjoyed this blaster. It uses up to a 1500 milliamp hour battery. I've got the one that Jesse suggested, and I actually started carrying these on the shop as well because about 10 people asked me if I carried the battery for the FDL, and then I realized I only carried ones that were a little smaller and maybe a little underrated. So this is the 35 to 70C 1.5 amp hour pack, and Turnigy, as usual, makes all of their packs are fantastic. So it's a great pack, and I played with a 1000 milliamp pack, also a Turnigy, last weekend, and that lasted the whole day no problem. But I only played with this for about a third of the round, so I expect that this one battery will easily last a whole normal day of play. I can't wait to see where Jesse takes this and where Project FDL goes next. I know he's got more coming along down the pipeline, and I know he's constantly working on new stuff just like I am. So I'm really glad that there are people out there making cool stuff like this because, yes, it's expensive and it is only for a certain niche as far as the expense that goes into this, but it's really cool to see something that's not just the big, huge companies with all this money, like Hasbro and even the smaller guys like Busby. They're still massive companies compared to somebody 3D printing these out of their house. And hopefully I'll have something somewhat similar in a rival blaster in the future. I am going to be revisiting Silfrina. That is one of the blasters that's going to get revamped this year. No, not revamped. That's the drag thing. Forget about it. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys get a chance to play with this. If you're one of the people that plays at my games, if you're very, very, very careful with it, I'm happy to let you try this out. And until next time, I'm out of darts.